So, hi, I'm Kathy Bertone, and I wrote the book The Art of the Visit, and I'm here with my friend George, and he's gonna ask some questions, and we're gonna do a little interview. Hey, George.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I love the book.
Oh,
I was
thanks.
one of the early buyers of the book, and I
Yes.
received it, and it's great. I like it, and I could use it myself personally.
Good, good, I'm glad. Thanks for buying it.
Oh, you're certainly welcome. I have some questions though for you.
Okay.
What motivated you to write this book?
Well, it's interesting. My husband and I had three homes, and basically we were always having friends and family. And some visits went really well, and others did not go as well. And so I started to think about, what made those visits that went well go well, and the others didn't. And I started to write things down. So over the course of several years, I really came up with some good solutions, I thought, for making the times together that we have with family and friends go as well as they can. So that was the motivation.
What's great about the book is you talk about from the host's perspective, and you also talk about from the guest's perspective. What made you decide to write it in that kind of a manner?
Well, because we both have guests and hosts have similar issues, but also some different ones. So it was important that it just not be a book about hosting, how to host, but because having a successful visit is really important about both host and guest doing the things that they have to do to make the visit go well. So it's not just one person or one party doing one thing, it's both.
Now, you talk about 7 simple steps for being a good host and a good hostess. Tell us about those.
Well, the seven simple steps to ensure a smooth visit really are things that the host and guest should do ahead of time to make sure that the visit goes as smoothly as it possibly can. One very simple example is if you're a guest and you're coming to spend the weekend, and you know that your mother or your grandmother is really terrified if you're 5 minutes late, let alone an hour, you need to call. Make sure that your host knows if you're running late. That's a really simple one. A more complicated one is telling people or telling your host what you need in advance of the visit. So there's simple steps that you really should do as host and guest to make sure the visit goes as well as it possibly can.
You also talk about 12 qualities that you need, say categories of things that you need to do. Not really,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
tell us about those.
Well, I guess from the guest perspective, let's go there first.
Yes.
I think one of the big categories would be to respect the host's space and their boundaries. You're coming into their home, maybe you're bringing your three kids and your two dogs for the week or whatever. So you really have to respect those boundaries that your host has. That's important. I think the second broad category is to be cool. You've got to be flexible, you've got to be cool, you've got to be able to handle the hostiles. Okay, sometimes we all get into those situations where the in-laws or whatever, there's some hostile folks, so you've got to be able to do that. And I think the third broad category is to be present and engaged. We live in an era right now of gadgets. We're in the gadget world, and you can't just go to your parents or your grandma's house or your in-laws and be always on the computer or texting or whatever. You have to be present and engaged, and that includes being helpful. You've got to really, be helpful and do things around the house and that kind of thing. So I guess there's 12 essential qualities, but I think if broken down, those are the three big
That's
categories.
very good. Now, you talk about advanced planning a great deal in the book. Obviously, it makes sense that people plan their visits before, and also as guests, they plan. Tell us why that's so important and what we can do as good hosts and guests to do this advanced planning.
Yeah, that is, I'll tell you, permeates throughout the entire book because it is so important. You've got to be able to let your host, if you're a guest, know what some of your needs are. For example, is your child allergic to peanuts? If you haven't seen your friends in 6 months or whatever, have you become a vegan? There's things that you really have to communicate if you're a guest to your host in advance. And the flip side is true too. If you're a host, let your guests know what to expect. Do you have some events planned? So the more
Yes.
communication, not the day before, but a week or two before, is so important. And now with the way we communicate today, email is a great way to do that. I wouldn't post on your Facebook wall that whatever concerns or issues you might have. That's a little too public. But certainly sending those private messages is a fabulous way to go.
Now, we talk about sending messages in advance and trying to get the expectations established between both parties in this. Um, what should that email contain or that instant message contain to assure that you cover all these general bases?
Yeah, that's a good question. You can find an example on my website where I talk about, how to really send a tactful, tasteful email because emails can or instant messaging, it can sound a little harsh. You don't want to sound like you're a demanding person, I have to have, a certain cream in my coffee. So there's a way to say it tactfully. Short and sweet really works the best. But what's important is to get your needs across so that people really understand what they can do as hosts to make the visit as comfortable as it can be, and vice versa.
Now you talk about a lot about the this physical space and the respect for this for the hostess area and the guest. But what about if there's a small space? We usually vision someone coming to someone's home and there's lots of space and
Right.
not being crowded. What happens if I invite a guest and I'm living in Manhattan and living in an 800 square foot apartment? How
Right.
do we deal with that?
Oh, I love that question because that was part of the fun thing too about writing the book was envisioning the living room and that pull-out sofa or just sleeping
Futon,
on the
the
sofa or the
futon.
futon. That's right. So really, what I talk about in the book is creating a small space that's like a mini guest room. And mini guest room is great because people want to be comfortable during that weekend, but also you've got to be able to efficiently deal in that space too. So there's all kinds of tips and tricks in the books about setting up that living room and the kitchen and the bathroom so that it works well for a weekend or maybe longer with friends and family.
Is the book available yet?
Yes, it is. You can find it in major bookstores all over the country, and also, of course, Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and other online sources, indie books, your independent bookstores. So, yeah, it's available right now, and it's just in time for the summer travel season.
You know, I had the chance to read this book and I find it very interesting. The question that I have to you is how do I send a copy to my family and friends without being overly influential on them?
Right, without saying, here, please read this before
Right,
you come.
exactly.
Just say, this is a great little book, right? Not little, I don't want to say it, but okay, okay. I'm
Okay,
sorry, we're gonna
edit
edit
that
through
out.
that. We're gonna edit through that. You can just say, this is a really fun book that I found. It's got a lot of good information, and I thought you would be interested because you entertain so much, or you have friends and family coming over so much, or you go and visit.
So not related to the event that's going to be occurring, but more as a general reference
That would be the
book on etiquette.
that would be the best way to do it.
Etiquette.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Kathy.
Oh,
Thank you for
thank
joining
you,
us.
George. It's been so much fun.
Yes.
Thanks. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Bye.